Hello, world. Today is Monday, August 24, 2026. This is a sideshow. I'm Theodore Parker, coming to you from the East Coast of the United States, Lexington, Kentucky. Okay, we've gotten through the weekend. How did that experiment go with drinking water that I left you with on Friday? Is everybody up to speed now? And in case you missed Friday's program, you can go back and check that to see what it was all about at the conclusion of the show. So here we are on Monday, and usually I check the weather for this area, so we'll do that. Currently it is 73 degrees. The high today will be 80. Atlantic tropical development possible this weekend. Temperatures in this area almost the same as yesterday. And outside conditions for activities currently. Running is good. Cycling is fair. And gardening is good. The AQI is moderate at 63. Pollen, tree none, grass low, ragweed moderate. The UV index is moderate right now. The air is dry as opposed to muggy or humid, and the wind is calm at 3 miles per hour. Today, sunrise was at 7:01 a.m. and sunset will be at 8:18 p.m. Other related news, if you called in sick today, we know why. August 24. It's so hot, these farmers work at night. Wind launches lounge chairs into Orlando pool. And life cycle of a hurricane explained. So, as I said, currently it's 73 degrees in this area, and the time on the East Coast is 10:28 a.m. In our news items coming up over the weekend, on a sad note, it was announced that the passing of one of the cast members of the movie The Five Heartbeats, actor Michael Wright, passed away from a rare heart condition. His wife made the announcement. He was 70 years old. He played the character Eddie King Jr. in The Five Heartbeats. If memory serves me, the group started out with 4 members, and then they added a 5th and then adopted the name Five Heartbeats. Okay. But if you haven't seen the movie, it is worth seeing. Vanessa and daughter Natalia posted a tribute to Kobe Bryant for his birthday, August 23rd, born 1978, in Philadelphia. Kobe passed away along with their daughter Gianna in a helicopter crash January 20th, 2020. At the time, he was 41 years old. I remember when I heard the news, the first thing I said was, "Oh no, not Kobe." Speaking of tributes to age, both of these are from the Motown, Hitsville, I believe. First up, at 87, Mavis Staples is getting stronger with age. I'm just another soldier in the army of love. She did 2 shows last week in London's Union Chapel. She is a proud daughter of Chicago. And I myself remember one of her cuts, "Respect Yourself." At age 85, Motown legend Martha Reeves says she's hit new level with first record in 2 decades. Also from Motown Records. This was kind of an extensive interview with her, and I read it. And one point, or one thing that I will pass on to you, is that as a receptionist before joining the A&R department, or after shortly joining A&R department, she met Stevie Wonder at age 8. So she said, without any announcements as to who he was or why he was there or anything else like that, they kind of struck up a bond that has lasted through the years. But her introduction to him and subsequent conversations, they got to know each other rather well. So when he was called into Studio A, she escorted him over there and went over there with him. And she remembers that he played every instrument in the studio. Keyboard, well, piano probably then, congas, bongas, xylophone, harmonica, and probably 1 or 2 more. Played all of them. So she remembers that. And at the time, Barry Gordy was present, and he said, the boy is a wonder. So from being Stevland Judkins, he became Stevie Wonder. So that's just a little story about how he got the name. Excuse me. Speaking of age, on the Japanese island of Okinawa, a cluster of villages produced so many people who lived past 100 that researchers spent decades studying their diet and eventually bred a part of the effect to a purple sweet potato that supplied roughly 60% of daily calories the first half of the 20th century. This research was started in 1949 and ran for 50 years. And in those 50 years, 90,000 centurions were recorded on the island of Okinawa. And this article comes from Space Daily, dated August 19th, 2026. The rest of the diet was a combination of meat, fish, and maybe 1 or 2 other products, 1 or 2 other items. And if you think that's a wonderment, do a little quick comparison. And this is just posing a question to Google. What is the life expectancy age in the United States? Here we go. Average life expectancy at birth in the United States is 79.0 years, according to final CDC National Center for Health Statistics data. This overall figure marks a record high for the country, driven by recent drops in deaths from COVID-19, unintentional injuries, and drug overdoses. Breakdown by sex. Both sexes combined, 79.0 years. Females, 81.4 years. Males, 76.5 years. Gender gap, women live an average of 4.9 years longer than men. Life expectancy at age 65 here in the United States. For individuals who reach age 65, the remaining expected years of life are total population, 19.7 additional years. Females, 20.8 additional years. males 18.4 additional years. So if you think that living to 100 is not that great, there's something to compare it to inside the borders of the United States, east to west, north to south. Speaking of Asians, this next article, Asians but different. In 2016, Mark Zuckerberg's wife, Priscilla Chan, founded a school that was designed to be different. 10 years later, and after $125 million in funding, the board voted to close it. Now, in and of itself, that might sound like, they're closing the school. But just a few facts from the article. The Primary Schools Board voted unanimously in April 2025 to close the school after learning that CZI would not continue funding it beyond the 25-26 academic year. According to people familiar with the situation, Board President Jean-Claude Bizarre said he had presented CZI with several options for the school's future before the vote, including winding the school down gradually, and said the board would not have voted to close without alignment from its primary funder. A CZI spokesperson said the decision to close ultimately rested with the school's board and that the organization's focus had been on the school's academic results rather than its cost. So here we go with a few numbers. For some measures, the primary school's academic performance fell short of both state benchmarks and its own leadership's expectations, complicating efforts to eventually replicate its model in public and charter schools elsewhere. A Stanford University report found that in spring 2025, 14% of local third grade and above students exceeded state literacy standards, compared to 26% at the primary school itself and 47% statewide. Still, the school said its 8th grade students, many of whom had attended for a decade, demonstrated above 50% grade level proficiency in their final year, and a founding staff member said students showed steady academic progress after the pandemic, alongside improvements in well-being and socio-emotional skills. Around 85% of primary school students completed their annual well child visit, compared to 55% of children on Medicaid in the country. Around 540 children were enrolled across the 2 campuses of the primary school. As per the WSJ Wall Street Journal report, Malia Fakapela gives an example of this child and what she went through. Continues, CZI pledged $50 million when the closure was announced, covering the remaining balance of the school's lease with the district and supporting local organizations to continue offering some services. The organization also contributed $3.6 million toward education savings accounts for affected families, 10,000 pre-elementary student, 2,500 per preschooler, and 1,000 for child and early childhood education programs. According to CZI, having a single major backer indefinitely was never the intended long-term model. The goal had been a school that would eventually be sustained primarily through public investment, and the school reportedly tried to keep its per-pupil spending in line with typical public school levels. So, there we have it. So that's coming from the Times of India, dated August 24, in case you want to read the other parts of the article for yourself. Speaking of school closings, excuse me. Excuse me. It was announced on July 31st, 2026 through AP News, World News. Oprah Winfrey says she will close her school for girls in South Africa next year. Oprah Winfrey says from Johannesburg, Oprah Winfrey says she will close the school for underprivileged girls she set up in South Africa 2 decades ago at the end of next year. Winfrey opened the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in 2007 after being inspired by conversations with former South African President Nelson Mandela about the transformative power of educating girls. He was among the guests at the school's opening ceremony. Winfrey's charitable foundation ran and funded the school, but it was always a part of the agreement that the academy campus near Johannesburg be ultimately handed over to a Provincial Education Department, the academy said. The dream was never simply to build a school, Winfrey said in a statement issued by the academy on Wednesday. It was to invest in the limitless potential of young women. That mission doesn't end with one campus. It continues in every girl whose future can be transformed through education. More than 500 girls have graduated from the academy, and some have attended top universities in South Africa, the United States, and Europe, according to the Oprah Winfrey Charitable Foundation. The Gauteng provincial government will take over the 52-acre academy campus, which has 21 classrooms, 6 science and computer laboratories, a 10,000-volume library, and a 600-seat theater. It did not immediately say what the plans for the property were. Gauteng Provincial Minister for Education, Lebongang Mali, said those currently enrolled in the school will be able to complete their education with uninterrupted financial support. Let's see. There was one blemish in 2007. The Academy drew international attention shortly after opening in 2007 when several students accused a dormitory matron of physically and sexually abusing them. Winfrey traveled to South Africa to meet with students and parents, publicly apologized, and commissioned an independent investigation. The matron was acquitted of criminal charges in 2010. So, education. Speaking of women and education, I did have this one. I had mentioned before that when the Taliban was celebrating their 5 years in rule, and it was mentioned about the plight of the women in that country. At the same time, the UN, let's see if I can get it pulled up here. The UN issued a statement while the United Nations has acknowledged that the country has become more stable since the takeover, it is warned that lasting stability cannot be possible unless the Taliban rulers, who remain isolated internationally, lift restrictions on women and girls, protect basic rights, and address terrorism concerns. A reduction in conflict has brought tangible benefits for many Afghans and created opportunities to focus on recovery, development, and regional economic cooperation. United Nations Assistant Mission in Afghanistan, or UNAMA, said in a statement ahead of the anniversary. It added, however, that restrictions on women and girls impede Afghanistan's recovery and its reintegration with the national community. In the past alone, this exclusion of women and girls from education, employment, public life, justice systems, and healthcare has only intensified, entrenching what remains the world's most severe women's rights crisis. So those were statements that accompanied that celebration from the UN. I'm just trying to make sure that. Meanwhile, the UN World Food Program said child malnutrition has reached critical levels in a third of Afghan's provinces and is expected to worsen as funding shortfalls force cuts in food distribution and other support. Speaking Friday from Kabul, the special representative for the UN Women's Agency, Sarah Ferguson, urged donors not to abandon Afghan women and girls, saying the agency is getting only a quarter of what it needs. She said more than half the 74 women's organizations surveyed in April in Afghanistan said they were closed to suspending or halting work because of aid cuts. So, UN has also issued a statement beside their celebrations, and that came from AP as well. And this article was dated August 14th, 2026. So now we've talked about charitable organizations and donations to education in general, and, well, particularly to women and girls. We can take a look at what the statistics are in this country. Because when you listen to the numbers from Priscilla Chan's schools, and also comparing what's going on in South Africa with Oprah's project, we need a little comparison as to what's going on inside the borders of the United States. So here we are. From Google, what are the performance levels in public schools percentage-wise? Public school performance levels in the United States are measured in percentages through national assessments like the Nation's Report Card. Nationally, roughly 35% to 40% of public school students score at or above proficient in core subjects like reading and math. And I'm sharing these numbers because you would think from the way the article is reading that they might want figures in the 90s or the 80s, like that. But those numbers are not reflective of how the school system is set up in this reporting. So it continues. Nationally, roughly 35% to 40% of public school students score at or above proficient in core subjects like reading and math, while about 44% of students begin a school year assessed as behind grade level. NAEP achievement levels, the National Assessment of Education Progress, breaks student performance down into three primary tiers. Advanced, superior performance, typically achieved by fewer than 5 to 10% of students depending on the grade and the subject. Proficient, solid academic performance and mastery over challenging subject matter, averaging 30% to 40% of public school students nationally. Basic, partial mastery of prerequisite knowledge and skills. Below basic, scoring under the basic threshold, indicating a lack of fundamental mastery. Percentiles and distribution. Performance is also tracked via student distribution percentiles to measure gaps over time. 10th and 25 percentiles, lower performing student cohorts. 50th percentile, middle performing student baseline. 75th and 90th percentiles, higher performing student cohorts. So if you want further information, National Center for Education Statistics is a source that you can access. If this is of interest to you or you want more detailed information. Excuse me. Speaking of applying yourself, here's an article dated again yesterday, August 23rd. And it's for dealing with Priscilla Chan again. And I usually kind of like, well, she's Asian, but this part about her I did not know. So it's again from the Times of India. Priscilla Chan's parents fled Vietnam by boat. Their daughter became the first in her family to attend college and later pledged millions to scientific research. So here we go, short but brief. Priscilla Chan's journey from the daughter of Vietnamese refugees to a Harvard graduate, pediatrician, and major science philanthropist is rooted in a family story shaped by war and migration. Her grandparents put her parents, who were teenagers at the time, on boats to flee Vietnam during the war. Chan grew up in Massachusetts, where her parents worked to build a new life after arriving in the U.S. as refugees. She became the first person in her family to attend college, graduating from Harvard before earning her medical degree from the University of California, San Francisco. Her experiences as a teacher and pediatrician later influenced her approach to philanthropy. Alongside her husband, Mark Zuckerberg, she went on to help direct substantial funding towards scientific research through the Chan-Zuckerberg Initiative. Her extraordinary journey demonstrates how personal hardship and resilience can ultimately translate into a profound commitment toward improving healthcare access and scientific understanding for future generations worldwide. Her story also highlights how the opportunities created by one generation can shape the ambitions and impact of the next. Today is Monday, August 24, 2026. This is The Sideshow. I'm Theodore Parker. That's it. Hashtag.